All right. So, everyone, hello and welcome to all our participants today, and also, of course, our speakers. My name is Jan. I'm one of the directors of AustCham Thailand, and I'm honored to be your host today. Before we go into the topic of this webinar, let me introduce to you our speakers. So we have from Eason Energy, we have Patrick here with us. He is a civil engineer, has 12 years of experience in the heavy industry and the energy sector. His expertise lies in operational excellence, where he led initiatives across 6 nuclear energy sites in the UK, focusing on leveraging IoT and data analytics to enhance efficiency for both the energy sites and also the local heavy industrial clients. And then also we have from PCS Thailand, Neil van Herden with us. Neil is originally from South Africa, and he has been living in Thailand for over 12 years now. He currently works with PCS Thailand on topics of innovation and technology, helping the organization to drive technology adoption across its different services. He is a frequent speaker on this topic, on topics such as energy efficiency, technology adoption, and also digital transformation. And Neil is also the chairman of the South African Thai Chamber of Commerce, and who is also a co-host today. So I'm very glad that AustCham and SATCC could organize this webinar together. And I think it's a very exciting topic we cover today. So why do we hear so much about energy efficiency now? Although it has been around for many years, there's no time like the present to put energy efficiency at the center stage. Energy prices are rising, climate change is becoming more noticeable, and geopolitical instabilities have emerged. And then, of course, there are the EU targets that are pushing for net zero and green energy in all industries. When all of these factors are combined, it has become more important than ever to make positive change in the energy field. And really, now is the time to do it. So energy efficiency isn't just a buzzword. It's here to stay, to make us more resilient to climate change and paving the way for a brighter and more sustainable future for us all. And it all starts with energy monitoring as part of your broader sustainable strategy. All right. Neil, I see you changed the, okay, I was about to say, please, next slide. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Now, let me introduce to you the companies behind this webinar today. We have Eason Energy. Eason specializes in providing the best of breed of energy efficiency energy efficiency and management services through a combination of UK design tech, cloud-based real-time analytics, and actionable energy saving solutions. They use big data drawn from devices and circuit level inputs existing in meters and IoT sensors, and even, I hope I say this word correctly, aniscopes that provide a granular breakdown of exactly how, when, and where you are using and possibly wasting energy. And then also, of course, we have PCS Thailand with us. They are part of the OCS group. And just a side note, PCS Thailand is established in Thailand since 1967. So they have been around for quite a while. And they deliver a full range of facility management services in Thailand. They have currently over 35,000 experienced staff providing essential services across sectors from manufacturing, commercial, healthcare, retail to education. Currently, there are 19 PCS offices and 6 PCS training centers in Thailand. And without further ado, let me hand over to Patrick, who will introduce us into this topic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan. Well, so thank you everyone for joining us. So I think the best place to start is obviously the path to net zero. So what are we doing? Where do we do it? So why should we do anything? Why should we do this path to net zero? Obviously, some of the major benefits that we have now are climate change mitigation. So our planet is currently facing many different threats from the effects of climate change due to obviously greenhouse gas emissions. We also have the economic benefits. So energy efficient practices that we can put in place will help save money for your business. They will help lower your energy bills and reduce your maintenance costs. We also have things like health, well-being, and sustainability. So, cleaner air, reduced pollution, improved indoor environments. These can all positively impact your staff and the public health, and they'll make your companies more sustainable and resilient for the future. We have obviously global cooperation or government action. So change is not going to happen automatically. We do require this to be done by everybody for us to get anywhere. So we have organizations like the UN currently leading items such as COP28, so setting environmental targets and pushing governments to bring in mandatory carbon energy reporting, which will form parts of upcoming carbon taxes, of which CBAM in the European Union is an example of this. So the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism. So in summary, on the path to net zero, it's not only responsible, but it is essential for the sustainability and resilience for the future of all our companies. Okay, Neil, go to the next slide, sorry. So that was a quick snippet from a video which we have and use internally. There is more, but it goes on to be a bit more salesy, so we just left it there. So the question now is, where do we start? Everyone's on this path, the path to net zero. So usually the first stop on the path would be to do a energy gap analysis. So we need to understand where your company is. You probably want to also think about appointing a responsible person to manage your energy or even efficiency, environmental targets and goals if you haven't already got one. You're going to need policies for the group or the company, and you're going to need to look at multiple different areas. With regards to then energy efficiency or efficiency of the factory, having something like real-time monitoring is a key first step. Obviously, this helps you understand exactly what is going on continuously in your factory and allows you to then build the next steps of what you want to do. So as you can see, going across, then you would have the opportunity to implement low cost or no cost energy saving solutions. So these are items which you can do based on the information you now have. So from that, you can then hopefully start your savings, either be carbon, money, or other areas of efficiency savings. Finally, after that, you would look at what we call technology-driven energy savings. This is when you have to make an investment on something. Either you want to control it, or you want to buy a new efficient motor or machine or a HVAC system than you currently have. After this, you want to then start looking at converting to renewable energy. And the point being is it's the final step before you get to net zero. Okay, next slide, Neil. So renewable energy or energy efficiency. This is a question we get asked quite a lot, and it's a real big issue for companies. We talk with a lot of companies don't seem to understand the difference between renewable energy and energy efficiency. So renewable energy is a form of energy generation. So it helps produce electricity without greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, the downside to having something like renewable energy is that it's not always available or reliable. So solar requires sun, wind for wind, and water for hydro. So these are great, but they are a great way to offset what you are currently using. Energy efficiency, quite literally the definition is using technology and practices that require less energy to perform the same function. So it focuses on minimizing your waste and maximizing your output. So reducing your waste therefore lowers your energy demand and use and expenditure. So you can save money, save carbon, and save the environment, while at the same time not having such a high demand on energy for your factory, meaning you would need less renewable to continue upgrading. Okay, next slide, I believe. So which one and where do we start? So ultimately, to get to net zero, we do need to have both. Okay, this is a chart from the World Bank, I believe, and it shows the importance of the different sectors for helping to push to get to net zero. So obviously, to reach net zero, we must adopt both renewable energy and energy efficiency. But there are some major benefits to starting with energy efficiency. And number one, optimizing resource use. So energy efficiency reduces your overall energy demand by minimizing the wastage, and it maximizing the output from your existing energy source. So we make better use of your available resources. Cost effectiveness, investing in energy efficiency technologies often has a quicker payback period than installing renewable energy systems. And it's also more cost effective to reduce energy consumption first and then supplement with renewables. You have your energy impact. So while renewables are cleaner than fossil fuels, their production and installation still have environmental impacts. So prioritizing efficiency helps to mitigate the overall environmental footprint. And then energy security. So energy efficiency enhances your resilience by reducing your dependence on your external energy sources, and it provides a buffer while transferring and transitioning to renewables. Okay. So an introduction into energy efficiency. So what is energy efficiency? We've covered this slightly already, but energy efficiency is the process of using less energy to perform the same task while still achieving the same level of output and productivity. So improving energy efficiency can be beneficial for individuals, businesses, and governments, as it will help reduce energy bills, lower the greenhouse gas emissions, and improve your energy security. But obviously, why should I care, right? Why should we care? Energy efficiency is one of the smartest ways to improve your company's performance, not only by reducing your energy bills, but by also improving the way you understand and operate your business. Reducing your carbon emissions and footprint, as well as being ready for the future, will continually evolving regulations and compliance ensures your company's stability and resilience. So why does energy efficiency, sorry, next screen. So why does energy efficiency in this industry matter, or in industrial sectors matter? This is a quick snippet I pulled from the World Bank. So in 2015, industry accounted for about 29% of all global energy consumption and about 36% of CO2 emissions. By 2050, the population growth in economic development, developing countries are likely to increase demand for raw materials by 45 to 60% relative to 2010. These in turn will increase the demand in the industrial sector. And unless the energy efficiency potential is realized, the industrial emissions of CO2 will rise from 50 to 150% by 2050. And this alone will impair all global efforts to mitigate climate change. So as you can see, it's a very important reason why we all need to take this. Governments aren't going to let this stand, which is why we're going to see increasing push from governments, countries to report and show what is going on, because we all need to make changes. So energy efficiency in factories, which is the topic for today, but again, this applies for all businesses. You can all make benefits from this. Energy efficiency is obviously one of the key items for a factory, which can be, large consumers of energy. And there are several energy efficient technologies and practices that we can adopt to help factories. So number one is obviously the energy monitoring systems. This is something that Jan mentioned. We have our product, an Enoscope, and we view this as being obviously the start of an energy efficiency project. And we always say, if you can't monitor it effectively, you can't manage it efficiently. So that is a very key point. Obviously, after you've managed it, we then would like to start looking at things like your optimization of the human behavior. So based on the data that we have received, the data that we have got, we would then be able to look at the patterns that your staff, that your operation are currently using to try and make you more efficient, to save energy, make your production better. Then after human behavior, we look at automation and scheduling. So if we can't make changes via human behavior because of whatever reason, we can look at putting things into an automation cycle. It may require a little additional equipment, but we can make sure aircon units are not turned on too early or left on overnight. We can make sure that machines can't start up unnecessarily. There are certain things that we have in place that can help. So the final and last step in energy efficiency is obviously using the data to help us understand and invest in new solutions or technology. And from this, obviously, we can look at things like the insulation or building seal, so making sure that you're not losing unnecessary cooling. Again, your LED light bulbs, using more efficient lighting. Energy efficient motors, so inverters, VFDs. A lot of companies have already gone down this route, which is brilliant. And heat recovery systems. Now, one of the key things about energy efficiency is making sure that you are able to see and verify what you have implemented. So it's not the same as just changing your light bulbs and hoping you save money on them, because everyone we've talked to has changed their LED light bulbs, but no one has any idea how much they've saved. The point about the energy monitoring system is that you can set a baseline, you can see what you are doing, you make a change, be it human behavior, automation, or investing in new technology, and then you can physically see exactly the change that is had to your energy and your efficiency. And then from there, you can continue. and you can make sure that things aren't changing, haven't gone back to how they were, or you're continuing to improve. So it is a very key part of the energy efficiency sector. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about a case study we had. So this is a case study from Tex Plastics. It's a UK plastic manufacturer. They do a lot of sort of thermo injection molding. So we've installed a number of devices on their site. And from that and live monitoring, we started off by doing the baselining, and we went through their site, showing them the optimization and timings of their machines, of their staff, of their air conditioning sections. And we were able to help them find and save 26.7% on their energy bills, which I believe is an annual saving of about £250,000. So that has really helped them. An additional part of one of the outcomes is that they had multiple machines that were running the same process, and it was very easy to see the extra energy used in the old machines. So it helps them, or is helping them currently, build the business case study and basically the new buy point for when they need to buy new equipment for their factory. Okay, Neil? And I'll hand over to Neil now.
Okay. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you to Jan for the kind introduction, and it's great to see so much interest in this topic. I'm delighted to be here today representing both PCS Thailand and also the South African Thai Chamber of Commerce. So let's talk a little bit about technology. Without a doubt, the technology has impacted all of our lives and our businesses, and equally could and should play a very critical role in delivering energy efficiency and helping you on your path to net zero. It's an absolute key enabler when it comes to driving energy efficiency. And it's done mainly through connected devices, the use of data, and ultimately that helps us on topics such as automation. A key technology family that I would stress here is IoT, so Internet of Things, which really allow for real-time monitoring and control of equipment using these network sensors and meters as they're deployed across your facility. AI obviously is a buzzword today, but it also plays a critical potential role in this space, and it'll help us identify anomalies, predicting usage patterns that we otherwise wouldn't see. And it can go as far as recommending actions we can take to improve our operations and achieve that holy grail of energy efficiency. Big data, so obviously all of these sensors are generating a whole lot of data second by second on an asset level, right? And that uncovers usage trends, again, which we otherwise wouldn't see, using these vast data sets across multiple buildings or sites or geographies. In terms of connectivity, connecting all of these devices, the LoRa wireless networking capability has now allowed us to very cheaply connect a lot of these devices across a huge range, across your facilities, and so forth, making it a lot easier, a lot more powerful. I think finally, it's just fair to say that the Thai government is quickly starting to realize the importance of digital tools and technologies to help drive the momentum towards net zero. So how can technology help us? Firstly, there's, of course, the real-time data that we're gathering, again, in real time, second by second, from each of these key assets that consume energy. And that can help inform our decision-making and making a lot more timely and accurate. It also allows for remote monitoring of sites that are obviously further away from HQ, for example, and even problem resolution. It allows for scalability and flexibility in the way that you run your operations. And it allows for data-driven optimization of your plants and facilities and the way that your assets are running. It also opens the door beautifully to predictive maintenance, which I'll talk in a minute, which to me is a huge contribution towards driving energy efficiency. And then, as we all know, tools such as Zoom, for example, MS Teams, allow us to achieve organizational collaboration, as does access to this data across your plant and your teams. A little bit about predictive maintenance, as I said. So using vibration analysis, which is a powerful tool, we can help organizations achieve their energy goals. And this vibration analysis is a nice non-destructive technique to monitor the exact condition of machinery and equipment by analyzing and measuring their vibration patterns. So what this does is by analyzing that data, we can identify potential problems before they occur and potential failures before they occur. And I'm sure you can see the benefit of that. So 10 specific ways that this can help drive towards energy efficiency. So using this data, again, real time on an asset level, you can start seeing, detect anomalies very early on and take action. Your maintenance efforts, which are most likely considerable, can be a lot more precise. You can reduce that planned downtime, which obviously also leads to savings. And you can increase overall equipment efficiency, again, through this data that you're gathering. Energy savings can be delivered through better aligned machinery and the use of that equipment. And topics like improved bearing health or optimized lubrication become a reality. You can also do what we call condition-based monitoring of your key assets. And all of this leads to an improved and longer asset lifespan, which is obviously which also leads to savings. And finally, also possibly enhanced safety for your teams, your maintenance teams, etc., as they go about their work. So we wanted to cover a bit of regulation, and in particular, it's a mouthful, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM. So the bigger context, as Patrick already alluded to, is there is a marked increase in regulation across the world on energy, on sustainability and energy usage. And I think it's fair to say that there will be more to come, particularly focused on large companies to report on sustainability, impacts, risks, and opportunities. And this covers multiple dimensions: the environment, social, governance, and even human rights topics. Now, this was started in earnest on the 5th of January, 2023. And the idea is really to get an assurance of the information being reported by companies. There's also a drive to digitally tag this information and to include both sustainability in business strategy and decision-making by companies. So let's talk a little bit about CBAM. Again, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So it is the European Union's tool to ensure a fair price on carbon emitting during the production process, particularly of carbon-intensive goods, when they enter the EU. And the whole purpose is, of course, to encourage a cleaner industrial production process within non-EU countries, so also Thailand. Now, initially, this is being targeted specifically at some sectors, being cement, iron and steel, aluminium, fertilizer, and electricity. And From October last year, importers are required to report on their embedded emissions, and the charging that is part of this mechanism will start in earnest on the 1st of January 2026, specifically for cement, iron and steel, aluminium, and fertilizers. And this will then include electricity from the 1st of January 2027. Now, there were some free allowances under this program, but they're going to be gradually phased out between 2026 and 2035. And really what this means is CBAM, together what is called the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or CSRD, is just going to increase the need for energy savings data, so monitoring of that data. The last topic I want to introduce that I think is really important is what is called the IPMVP, or International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol. Now, when I first asked Patrick about this, he explained it to me well, and he said this is basically the ISO standard for reporting on energy efficiency, on the topic of energy efficiency. So it is a protocol that defines standard terms and suggests best practice for quantifying the results of your investments, right? And also quantifying the results of the initiatives that you've undertaken. So it helps you, it gives you best practice in calculating energy, water, and emission savings. Now, the core concept is quite simple. It's to use an accurate baseline to then be able to report on the savings you've achieved. Overall, this helps reduce the risk and hopefully increases the investments in energy projects across the world. So I'm going to hand back to Patrick, where we're going to do a live demo for you in a minute.
Patrick, I think you're on mute, just in case.
There we go. I was going to say, I'll start with the live demo then. So just share my screen. Okay. You can just let me know you can see that clearly.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
all good.
Perfect. Okay, so we haven't really explained a lot about, obviously, the technology and the stuff we use. We didn't feel this was the right forum for that. But we wanted to show you some of the idea of the analytics and the power of what we do and why it's important for companies to do this. So in front of you here, this is a showcase from a factory. This was live and actual data. However, that company is confidential, the information. So I've had to change some of the names of items. And we also, because of that, can't show you today's data. So I only allowed to look at historical data. But this would normally come through on a minute-by-minute basis and allow us to view what's going on. And as you can see, we do get to store that data for 5 to 10 years, so we can use it for the historical purposes of verification, which is what I mentioned earlier. So quick overview, obviously, all the data in front of us on the main screen. We have abilities to select your date ranges from when you want to look at from and to. So currently we're looking at a 5-month period. We would have all of our meters that we have connected up into that facility. We have our additional sensors that we have for this facility. We have the ability to choose what fields or items we want to show on our graph and table. So at the moment, we're just looking at the energy. Obviously, we can change that. We can make it the cost. We could look at the amperage or the current, power factors. The list goes on. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of items we can break it down into and have a look at. On top of that, we have our resolution. So we can look at minute by minute, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, or day. So as this is looking at 5 months, we're currently looking at one day by day intervals of power. So I wanted to show you a quick example of this. So I was going to look forward. We're going to look from the 20th to the 27th of March. Actually, sorry, before I do that, one of the first things I want to probably show you is actually we have the ability to break this down into what I would call pie charts. So we can see where your distribution of power is going. So from this alone, on that 5 months, we can see immediately that the chillers, the air conditioning for this, are approximately about 33% of the entire site. But obviously they have one of their main machines here, and that is running at 23%. So this is not what they had expected originally. So we've initially decided that we need to spend a bit more time looking at this main machine. So now I will focus on that. So as I said, 20th to 27th. Let's unselect those and have a quick look at the main machine. So now we are looking at this machine. Let me quickly just change that 15-minute data. What we can see here is the power being used by this machine across the week, across those 7 days. Now, this machine runs in a factory which is a 24-hour operation. And on the weekends, so as you can see here, Saturday, it shuts down for a cleaning maintenance operation. However, this machine actually hasn't been turned off. It's been left on standby. So they obviously weren't looking at doing any maintenance on this machine that day, but they didn't shut it down. So that is an immediate saving we can look at there. So we can look at that immediately. We go down here, we can see that it's around about 1,200 kilowatt hours just for that weekend of not shutting it down. So we're in the ballpark of around 6,000 baht just for one weekend of not shutting that machine down immediately. That's a saving found. So that is a great example of obviously, highlighting stuff. This was initially brought up to us by our technology and our AI analysis, and then it gets verified by our virtual energy managers. Another example, and something I will show you now very quickly, if we want to have a quick look at the same date period, but we'll look at the machinist shop. So we'll look at the CDU, FCU, and the room, plus we'll add in one of our air sensors for the machinist room. Because we've added an air sense in, we're going to want to add on temperature and PIR. So that is, PIR is the motion sense, so we can track if there's any motion in a room. So this may look a little bit cluttered to begin with. So let's clean up some of the data. So initially, we're looking here again at the energy used inside the machinist workshop, machinist room. So you can see here the weekends, Saturday. So this is actually the Sunday. They've stopped working quite late, obviously late shift, and then they've started again at 10. So finished after Saturday, started again on Sunday, and they've done the same on the Monday here. So let's have a look at this period here. We're looking at that Monday breakdown. So the first thing we want to add back in probably is to see what the temperature in that room is. So we can actually see from this period, the temperature has been maintained. It's not changed at all for this room. So that would indicate that possibly the aircon has been left on. We can then add in the aircon unit, so the CDU and the FCU that control the air conditioning in this room. And correct, we can see that the power has been left on. To add a little bit of context, we can double check by adding in the PIR sensors. And you can see that there is no motion in that room either. So there's nobody in that room. The air conditioning is on, and we can prove that via multiple different methods. So let's therefore have a look at So we're saying it's that period there. If I then turn off those, put back on the energy from the aircon units, scroll down, we can see the individual breakdown of each line. And we can also see that it's used about 87 kilowatts there. So it's nearly 100 kilowatts just for that one breakdown we had there. As we mentioned earlier, there were two of them, right? So we saw two periods. We have the Saturday and we have the Sunday, the two periods. So if we just say that basically, sorry, it can get quite confusing. If we just say that we're running at 5 baht per kilowatt hour, and we're saying it's approximately just shy of 100 kilowatt hours, sorry, for the Saturday and the Sunday, we're looking at nearly 1,000 baht for that weekend because someone didn't turn off their air conditioning unit. Now, if that happens every single weekend, you've suddenly now got 52,000 bahts worth of saving from one aircon unit in one room. How many rooms do you have? And it goes on from this. And this is just part of the idea of what the data can show and what the data can do. So I think that's enough for now. I don't want to explain or confuse too many more things. But yeah, so I'll hand it back over to you, Neil, if you like.
Sorry, Patrick, did you want to cover this?
I can. Yep, sure. Not a problem. So obviously, we talk about obviously advanced metering and monitoring technology with obviously skilled analysis. So generally, the solution that we often try and put forward is obviously the hardware, then you have your software, and then you have your service. So the hardware is the technology obviously we need to install that enables us to get the asset by asset or the breakdown of the information inside your facility, your site, your building, whatever it is that we want to have a look at. And this includes obviously the sensors, getting all that data in. So this is where earlier we talked about big data. This is where that comes from. All of that data then needs to be pushed into the cloud. So we have to have the software and the service that's attached to that. So the software then enables us to store and analyze all of that data in the cloud. So part of what you've just seen me doing with the analytics is part of that software. And of course, we have additional software that does uses machine learning, or what other people call AI, to identify patterns. It's so much data, we have to use it. And then that gets verified by our team of engineers. So we have the service. And the service is obviously it's our VEM, and we have teams around the world that specialize in this. So when information or patterns get picked up, they can get verified. And that enables us then to set up reports, alarms, automatic emails that we can ping through to companies. If necessary, if it's important enough, we can have a phone call direct to someone on site to say, we've identified this is happening. It could also be something as simple as monitoring multiple motors. That's a very basic example, or multiple machines or assets, 2 aircon units. And if we see one of those items is using more energy than the other, or it's increasing over time, it usually is an indication that it requires maintenance or something is faulty with it. So we can pick up on its maintenance long before it has a maintenance schedule. So there's additional benefits there. And of course, all this information then can get pushed through in our weekly reports or daily reports, depending on the site and our clients. They all have independent resources. So we work with them very closely to make sure that this information is passed through. Okay. So we've talked quickly about some of the reports. So one of the first reports when we start a project is what we call, it's basically an ESOR, so an Energy Efficiency Opportunities Report. This comes out after the first sort of month and a half to 3 months. It can go up to 6 months depending on the site and what you're producing. And it's like our initial audit findings, and we go through everything we're looking at in very high detail, breaking it down, continuing to break it down, highlighting areas where we might where there are savings, and producing information as well as explaining what the best remedy for that solution is. As we said, the first step should be either no cost or very low cost changes, right? So changing human behavior, making sure you're not coming in at 7 in the morning and turning on all the lights and all the air cons. Okay. Waiting half an hour, it may only save you 100 baht a day, right? But 100 baht a day every day for one air con, it goes on, it builds up. So it's all about finding these things. The key thing about it, as we said before, and I always try to reiterate this, the importance of the verification. So it's all right saying that you're doing it, because that's fine, but how do you prove it? If you're not continually monitoring and you're not continually checking that you're still upholding those standards, you cannot prove that you're still efficient or you're still making those savings. As I said before, how many people have installed energy efficient lighting and now their energy bills are twice as high or higher than they were? They can't see where that saving has gone. Doesn't mean that savings not still being achieved. It just means that energy is being used elsewhere in your facility for something else. So real-time energy monitoring and verification is massively important for that.
All right. Thank you very much, both Patrick and Neil. Very insightful. And with that, we come now to the interactive part of this webinar. And everyone has the opportunity to ask questions. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And perhaps I start with some questions that I already received upfront from some attendees today. And yeah, maybe one of you, either Patrick or Neil, you can help answer these. So first of all, I got one question. It was, how do you deliver savings and how do you verify them? I don't know who is the best person to answer this. Probably Patrick.
Probably me. I mean, I sort of covered that with the last couple of bits I was talking about. So obviously, how do you deliver savings? The first part is you have to monitor. You have to be able to identify where your saving opportunities are. And you then have to put items into place, procedures, governance, whatever it may be, to then achieve that. So from the live demo I gave you of that site, simple procedure basically saying that if the machine is going for, if you're doing a Saturday or Sunday shutdown, all machines should be shut off if not being operated on or whatever, right? So that's an immediate saving. And then making sure that there is a way of checking it. So, if we're not going to have someone following someone else around to double check what their work is doing, you can rely on a monitoring system. We can double check, we can set alarms and parameters in place. So that's your verification of that saving. I think that answers the question.
Maybe if I can just add as well. So, from our service, what you should bear in mind is we are your energy efficiency experts that are standing by your side and helping you identify opportunities based on the data we're seeing. But of course, you remain in charge of your facility and you're making the critical decisions about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. I think Patrick mentioned it earlier. What we encourage all of our clients to do is to have one energy champion within the organization that we can interact with and that can help us execute some of the decisions that we make. Now, in some instances, obviously, PCS has engineering staff on the ground embedded in our customer organizations. And in those instances, they can, of course, upon your instruction, also help deliver and achieve these decisions that we've made, whether they're behavioral changes or behavior changes in when you're using equipment, etc.
Very good. Yeah, thank you so much. we actually have one of the attendees currently raising the hand, and now I'm a Microsoft Teams person. I'm not so familiar with Zoom. I'm actually not sure if we can enable Mr. Nasreen to speak directly, or if questions need to be asked through the Q&A chat. Maybe the AustCham office team can help. If it maybe takes a moment, maybe we just continue with some other questions that we got. But I haven't forgotten about Mr. Nasrin. I will talking permitted. There we go. I like the AustCham office team just stealthily like getting the task done. All right, there you go. I think you can ask a question now. I see it's enabled, the audio.
Jan, I see we also have 2 questions in the Q&A.
I see it too, like, but I just wonder because just now the microphone is enabled for this one attendee if we finish that. But yeah, but it's maybe just continue. Yeah, so let's in the Q&A section, we have 2 questions, and I would just go from the top to bottom. So the first question is, as the goal of reaching carbon neutrality is of importance, in your opinion, what are the hindrances that can be removed to enhance the progress towards the goal of Thailand or goal for Thailand?
Yeah, maybe I can take a first stab of that. So I think, you know, this is a new topic for many people and for many businesses. And the key thing is awareness of the topic of energy efficiency and carbon neutrality within an organization. And it takes a fair bit of organizational alignment and communication. Also, what it requires is leadership from the front, right? That leadership makes this a priority and communicates that very clearly. Yes, you also have issues of budgets. This is maybe a budget line that wasn't on the P&L before. So leadership has to make you know, that budget available in order to address this topic, right? I think definitely within Thailand itself, there's a lot more awareness, and even consumers are wanting to see that businesses have an agenda and a sustainability agenda, etc. Almost every major company, obviously on the stock exchange of Thailand, has a sustainability section. When I read through those, I find it interesting, and you've got the issue is still there's no common reporting standard like MVP. So at the moment, it's still a little bit of free game. But I think we'll see that narrowing, and the SET potentially stipulating specific reporting protocols. So I hope that answers questions a little bit. Patrick, I don't know if you want to add anything.
The only bit I was going to add, you literally covered in the last sector, and it was the last section, and it was to do with the idea of being, you know, standards are still kind of forming here in Thailand specifically. So it can be a little bit of a ocean. I think people feel a little bit too overwhelmed by all the options and everything else that are going on. We are starting to see conformity towards a couple of routes. IPMVP is one of them. ISO, which is likely to fall under IPMVP. So I think that's the route that most companies are going to be pushed. I think that's, as you say, SET will be forming compliance based on that. I think that will certainly help.
Again, thank you very much. I think the next question is aligned with almost what you just said, but it covers a different aspect of this whole topic. When we are sourcing from suppliers in Thailand, are there any certificates? Is there anything we can consider to make sure that we source from companies that have responsible manufacturing practices? Paul Bailey asked this question.
You want to take a stab at that, Patrick?
I can take a stab. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not an expert on this side of it. My first thing would be to also make sure to ask, inquire. It's the same as you would when you run if you run a purchasing department, you have to put them all through their paces, any new suppliers coming on. So it should become part of your internal policies and governance as part of your supplier deck. But basically, you want to be checking to make sure obviously there are doing things in place, whether they are reporting on their carbon, whether they're reporting on their energy. And so the key thing is their embedded energy, because that's why it's cheaper, because they're not taking the same necessary measures as we have to in either Europe or in other countries that are abiding by certain laws. What those specific certifications are at the moment, I'm not 100% sure. I can certainly have a look and try and get back to you on that.
Okay. On behalf of the person asking, I would just say thank you. I think you covered it. And yeah, if there's a follow-up question, please feel free to type it again in the chat. In the meanwhile, I would like to ask one more question that we got beforehand. And I think you covered it already partly in the presentation, but just to clarify, if a business has already invested in alternative energies like solar energy, does it still make sense to invest also in monitoring energy efficiency?
I mean, so yes, it does. So even, best case scenario, you are now 100% supplied by solar energy. Investing in energy efficiency, all that means is that you will reduce your demand on your solar, meaning that you will require less of that. So if you have the ability to sell that back to the grid, which is not always the case here, it's a bit unfortunate, but what it does, as we said earlier, it can also create a buffer for your company. So if you want to obviously grow or expand, or you have higher operational needs, it covers that. It's not a bad way of continuing. It is required to get to net zero energy efficiency. So I think it's still very important to do. And if you aren't at 100% efficiency with your renewable, then all it does is increases the percent that your factory is covered by renewable energy. So even more important to do so.
Yeah, maybe just to put the point on it, you could have 100% renewable energy sources and still be highly inefficient in your use of energy. And we get this a lot. We talk to companies and they're like, well, I don't need energy efficiency, I've already got solar. Well, they're different topics. One is a source of energy, and the other one is efficiency fundamentally in how you use that energy.
All right, thank you very much. We also just got a new question in the chat from Kun Anucha, and please excuse me if I pronounce the names wrong. I'm German, I have an excuse. So the goal, is there anything else that you would expect from the government to do to enhance the attainment of the set goals? So basically, can the government do more than what they currently do to get closer to energy efficiency?
Maybe I'll take a stab at that. So definitely there's always a lot more than any government can do, and that also applies to Thailand. I think, as you already heard, there needs to be a standardization of reporting frequency and reporting protocol, because the danger of greenwashing, right? That people claim to be doing things, business claim to be doing initiatives, and they'll, in their annual reports, which I've seen many times, have these calculations of their energy savings results, which really are questionable. Now, what we need is a standard protocol, such as IPMVP, that uses a baseline and then calculates your generated savings or the results of your initiatives from there. Only if we have that common standard can we really then say, right, this is how, this is verified what this company has achieved through these initiatives, and we can, in fact, compare them to other companies in the industry. So I think the government definitely needs to play a leading role, needs to be very vocal, and also, saying what needs to be done and how it needs to be done is one thing. You also need to enforce it, right? Like we saw with the introduction of PDPA regulation, etc. There was a lot of, and still is, some ambiguity around it that needs to be clarified. And then, of course, the law needs to be enforced. So, yeah, short answer, the government should be doing more. And I think it's mainly around setting the framework that we operate in. Great question.
And I would agree with that. Very good question.
Right, perfect. The next question is from Kun Nasreen. So basically, he has been living here in Bangkok for quite a while, and I think he's like, I am just assuming right now he has seen some of the pollution issues in Bangkok, but probably covering all of Thailand. And he asks, what is your recommendation to force those companies that are the main pollution drivers to start properly implement energy efficiency, but also other strategies to reduce energy usage and overall reduce pollution?
I mean, following on from what Neil was just saying, I mean, it does need to come down from the top. And I think as we see regulation grow, I think then, as he said, we need enforcement. So I think there will be fines, there will be taxes on your products, on your company not meeting certain standards and certain requirements.
Mm.
So I think that's something that, and it needs to be led again from the top. There's, massive reason why you want to start this now, because you don't want to get caught out when those come. It's not something that's going away. The environment we know is not going to fix itself without our help at the moment. So this is a growing trend around the world. And as the world starts to expand these pressures, Thailand is going to have to follow suit. So it's not a matter of if they do it, it's a matter of when they're going to do it. I think that's something that's very important to remember. And I mean, I actually spoke with a company earlier this year at a big conference, and they've made some fantastic stuff. Although there are no current taxes in place in Thailand, they are doing energy monitoring. And what they're doing is they're taxing themselves internally based on the amount of carbon they produce. And they're taking that fund that they're putting aside to reinvest into more energy efficiency solutions. So they are preparing their own business and making it ready to and for all of the new taxes that are coming eventually. So they're basically setting themselves up to be resilient and to survive.
Yeah, maybe I'll just that's a great question. And by the way, I've also been in Thailand for exactly that long, 13 years. I think bottom line is we've got to hit where it hurts, right? So to make it prohibitively expensive for those polluting industries to continue those practices, right? So through a mechanism whereby they are, they're punished in a way for continuing practices, but also, I think there's increased pressure, visibility and pressure from consumers on companies that have bad practices. I'm thinking of examples in the UK of retailers that have continued to use single-use plastics. And that's in the public domain, and consumers are reacting by choosing to go to the competition. I also think that those businesses will and should find it difficult to find investors, right? Because investors, shareholders, key stakeholders are increasingly looking at the sustainability contributions of their businesses, and frankly don't want to get involved with businesses that are polluting. So the market forces, I think, will help drive and force companies in a way to clean up their act, and it should. And again, I think the government has a critical role to play in making sure that those dynamics work, right? Let's call out the polluters, let's help them and solve the problem, but also let's create a real disincentive for them to continue those practices.
Okay, very good. I hope this answers the question. Again, if any of the attendees have follow-up questions, please, again, just write them in the chat. In the meanwhile, actually, I would like to go one more time back to a previous question. Sorry, if you don't mind, I have
Apologies.
two more that I think are very, very interesting. So before we talked about, okay, if you have already alternative energies, does it still make sense? And obviously, yes, it does. But how about if you have already monitoring systems? There are different types of monitoring systems. Is it easy to expand to real-time tracking, what you showed us today? And a follow-up question on that I would like to ask directly is also a phased rollout possible? So do you need to track directly everything, or is it okay to go, for instance, by floor in a building, or have a different way to roll out these practices?
I mean, I'll take that probably. So, I mean, obviously, starting off with, if you've already got a system, I mean, obviously, depending on what system you have, depends on obviously how it can expand. So, a lot of companies we deal with do have SCADA systems already, or other forms of monitoring systems in place. So we can always find ways to push that data into either your SCADA system, either using an API protocol, or we can look at using MQTT, or possibly even Modbus, so we can just get it straight in there. Very similar to what a lot of the very big, consumer units would also do. The key is understanding what your limits are of your software and stuff like that. So if your software can only look at hour by hour data, it's really not granular enough. If you can't store historical data, it's almost of no use to you as well. So you've got to look at it and understand what it is you're trying to achieve and whether the stuff you currently have is fit for purpose. If not, maybe you have to upgrade the software you have or the system you currently have. But if it does, then you can bring in that information. The only thing I will add to that is, as much as it seems like a good idea to bring it in and add it to your system, unless you also have the trained expertise, the tools, and the resources to actually monitor your site, then that information quite a lot of time will end up doing nothing. So you're adding the monitoring function and all the capabilities, but you're not actually then achieving any of your savings, which is not a great step to do. So you do need to look at it case by case and understand what's going on, but yes, you can. The second part of your question, phased rollout. It again really does depend on your facility, how your power is distributed. If it's a fairly modern facility and your power is distributed, so you just have a distribution board on every floor, and then that breaks down for that floor, it becomes very easy. If you have shared resources and power distribution across multiple floors or buildings, it becomes much harder because it's very hard to then break down and trace the line of energy. So in that circumstance, you'd have to look at doing the whole site, a whole facility in one go. We have had cases where you have multiple sites and you can view them separately, which is fine. What we don't want to do though is make sure we're using the same power source. So if each site has its own connection to the grid, then that's fine. We can do it site by site. Or if we can break down that floor completely, so there's no additional energy going in, we can break down that floor. But generally, what we see is you would want to target the whole building in one go.
Yeah, okay. Maybe if I can just add to that as well, the analogy I'd like to use is going for a health checkup with your doctor, right? You don't go to your doctor and say, "Hi, doc, I want to just look at my blood sugar levels. Tell me how I'm doing," right? Because your doctor will tell you, well, simply looking at that metric of your health doesn't give you the full picture, right? You really want to be looking at how all the systems are interacting so that I can give you an overall assessment. So we typically recommend, and we've had this before, not looking at a system by system view, but really looking at as much of the organization as you can from a very high level and then going down deeper. And that's exactly what our consulting service and initial assessment will help you do, right? Obviously, it's cost prohibitive to look at every single asset in your facility, but we'll help you identify the critical ones that really need to be monitored And in many cases, we also deploy what we call roaming endoscopes. So there may be a small system or a single asset that you don't need to monitor, continually over time. You just want to have a view of, say, 2, 3, 4 months. It might be a new piece of equipment or equipment that you think might be underperforming. So that's all part of our service as well.
Okay, fantastic. So I would like to end the session with two things. So I know there's one more slide coming, Neil, but I also would like to combine it directly with one final statement from both of you. I would like to know if you had to give a simple answer on where to start on the path to net zero, what would that be? And you can lead this into the next slide, but also, yeah, you can just answer it. I leave it to you.
Okay. For me, the simple answer is start by doing monitoring. You need to understand what is going on. As I said earlier, if you can't monitor it effectively, you can't manage it efficiently.
Thank you. I would also just say, number one, as I said before, make it a priority internally, because as we all know, we've got a lot of priorities in our businesses. But if you don't clearly, as a leadership team, say, we're going to make this a priority, that's got to be the first start. Then I absolutely agree with Patrick, start with monitoring. You can't know where to apply the tools if you don't have that monitoring in place.
Oh, we got one more question in, if you don't mind. I would just quickly read it out from Kathy. Normally, how long does the energy assessment take before able to improve the energy efficiency? Does it take weeks? Does it take months? Can you give us a rough time frame?
I can. So, I mean, one thing I will just add on to this, onto that question. Obviously, energy monitoring, as we said, is a continual process, so we would expect it to continue. So it's not a one-time assessment, but so it's a continual cycle. So as soon as you've done the assessment, you make changes, and then you assess again, and so it continues on. However, the first iteration would normally be anywhere between 1.5 to 3 months for the baselining and understanding what's going on. That first report that comes out at that point would be the recommendations and things we can put in place. So as we mentioned, we can start by looking at doing simple, no cost or very low cost changes, i.e. just making sure your lights are turned off, your air cons are not on. And I showed in the analytics that simply turning off an air con in one room over a year would save you about 52,000 baht. That's one air con in one room. So I mean, it's an industrial size aircon, but it's an aircon. So it's an example of how these things build. And it's a very key reason why it needs, this continual monitoring from that point. But yeah, so normally I would say it would take about 1.5 to 3 months before you see your first saving, and then you will continue on from there. And it's continually upgrading, continually trying to find the next saving, pushing harder.
Yeah, a great question. And I'll just add criticality of establishing a baseline, right? What you don't want to do is put in some equipment, look at the data after a week and say, oh, great, look, we've, consumption's gone down, right? It could be a myriad of factors. It could be colder outside temperature. It could be a lower production run. It could be many things. So we really stress the criticality of that baseline, but then gets used, right? And obviously, the longer the baseline, the more accurate it is. But I agree with Patrick. I think normally after about 1.5 to 3 months, you've got that baseline established so that it's really meaningful for you to start measuring against.
If you don't mind, I'll quickly just add, I mean, going back to that word, because it is something we get asked quite a lot with regards to doing an energy audit or energy assessment. A lot of people assume that you can just come in and take a snapshot, see what they're doing, how efficient they are today, and then you can come back in a year's time and do the same thing. You can kind of do that, but it doesn't work as a form of verification of how efficient you are. because it is physically impossible to compare any day of the year to any other day of any other year, because we have so many factors. How hot is it? Humidity, whether you've got more operations going, less people in the building. There are so many variables that it just doesn't work. So that's why real-time monitoring and continuous monitoring is very important.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. I see there is a free energy assessment possible. Nia, do you want to say a few things about this opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So also back to the question of the first step. So this is absolutely a first step you can take. So we're happy to offer any participant today a free initial energy assessment. You'll be hearing from Patrick and myself. We will sit down and understand your business a bit better, and then make some initial recommendations and give you an initial assessment. And that ultimately then could also lead to a full proposal as to what our solution could look like for your business. And so if you're interested, please either scan the QR code and just leave your details, or contact Patrick or myself through one of these channels, and we'd be happy to help you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for this offer. This sounds very exciting. All right, with that, I think this webinar comes to an end. On behalf of AustCham Thailand, of I guess all the participants, I hope, and also SATCC, I would like to thank both Patrick and Neil for this insightful session, for sharing all of this information. And yeah, like you have mentioned, if there are any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to both of them. I think they will be happy to answer any questions later on as well. And everyone, thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, have a great day. Thank you.